They thought it would be just another freedom of navigation patrol. April 24, 2025. The USS William P. Lawrence, a guided missile destroyer, cuts silently through the Taiwan Strait. It's early morning, the seas are calm, skies are clear, but the tension, you could cut it with a knife. Then China speaks up. Not just words, but a full press statement from the PLA's Eastern Theater Command, translated loosely. We see you, and we're not happy. The Chinese military announces it's deployed naval and air forces to shadow and warn the American destroyer. Live updates flood state media, footage leaks, radar tracks are published, the message is clear, you're not welcome here. But the US response? Radio silence. No press briefings, no dramatic posts, just the Lawrence staying her course like nothing happens. What China calls provocation, the US Navy calls routine. But this was no routine on Tuesday. Because, that destroyer wasn't just making a point about freedom of navigation, it was sailing straight into contested waters that Beijing claims as its own, a move that, honestly, could escalate from saber rattling to sparks in just seconds. So what really happened out there? Was this a near miss? Maybe a warning shot or, something more? Because behind the headlines and official statements, there was a game of cat and missile, and someone blinked. The Lawrence didn't flinch. While headlines in Beijing screamed about illegal trespassing and serious provocations, the destroyer held course, not an inch off the planned transit path. No evasive maneuvers, no increase in speed, just a steady, deliberate glide through the strait. Right where international law says she belongs. The message was silent but unmistakable. We don't ask permission to the US Navy, this wasn't an escalation, it was Tuesday. Freedom of navigation operations, or, screw-ups, are kind of standard play in contested waters. They're basically how the Navy draws these invisible lines in the sea and, dares anyone to say otherwise. The South China Sea, the Taiwan Strait, US destroyers have passed through them, all calmly, legally, and very much on purpose. And the thing is, they don't do it alone. As the Lawrence moved east to west through the Taiwan Strait, she wasn't exactly broadcasting her presence, but she sure wasn't hiding either. Her radar signature was clean. Her AIS beacon was off, but military satellites overhead were feeding live situational data back to the Pentagon. Eyes in the sky, ears under the water, and probably a Virginia-class submarine somewhere nearby, riding silently beneath the waves. You don't sail into someone else's claimed territory without a few backup plans, and China knew it. Within hours of the Lawrence's passage, Chinese media released drone footage, grainy clips of a Plan Type 052D destroyer tailing the US ship at a distance. Reports claimed Chinese J-16 fighters had buzzed the area, close but not close enough to trigger a response. PLA Air Force pilots love to get close, but there's a line, and honestly everyone knows where it is. Because if one of those jets had flown too close, or if one of those planned ships had tried to block the Lawrence's course, the situation could have gone sideways fast. The rules of engagement in the Taiwan Strait are finely tuned, but, they're pretty fragile. One wrong radar lock, one misread maneuver, and the next thing you hear isn't a diplomatic statement, it's the Aegis combat system going hot. And if that happens, the Chinese wouldn't be the only ones watching, because this isn't just about Taiwan, it's about proving who gets to move through international waters without asking for a hall pass. And the US didn't come to play defense. The Lawrence completed her transit in less than 12 hours. No incident, no deviation. But make no mistake, the silence wasn't peace, it was pressure building. And the next move was already underway. Just as the USS William P. Lawrence disappeared into the Pacific haze, another pressure point lit up. A few hundred miles south on the other side of the Luzon Strait, warships were on the move. The Philippines and the United States were launching Exercise Balikatan, their largest joint military drill to date. More than 14,000 troops, dozens of ships, fighter jets, missile batteries, and amphibious assault rehearsals across land and sea. The timing, no accident. Within hours of China's announcement that it had shadowed and warned the U.S. destroyer, U.S. Marines were unloading HIMARS rocket systems onto a Philippine beach. A show of force, absolutely, but also a message to Beijing: we're not just sailing through the Taiwan Strait. We're building firing positions just over the horizon. In military planning, that's called shaping the battle space. And China was paying attention, especially since it had just flexed its own naval muscles a few days earlier. A carrier strike group led by the Shandong, one of the PLA Navy's most modern aircraft carriers, had just cruised past the Philippines' northern coast, well within the country's exclusive economic zone. The move sent a jolt through Manila, prompting immediate air patrols and radar sweeps. The message was clear. We can flank you from both sides, but the Philippines didn't back down. While the PLA was releasing propaganda footage of their intercept, U.S. Pacific Command was compiling ISR data from satellites, drones, and surface vessels. Every maneuver, every flyover, every tailing ship logged, tagged, filed. And behind every polite statement from the Pentagon was a quiet question being whispered in the planning rooms from Okinawa to Guam. How far is China willing to go this time? Because if these weren't war games anymore, if this was the opening act of something worse, then every move, every destroyer, every joint drill, every carrier group deployment wasn't just a deterrent, it was a dress rehearsal. And just beyond the political theater and all the flashing headlines, steel was moving across the sea fast.